The night sky above the alien world was dark, covered with smoke from machines that never rested. Far away, huge ships floated like shadows, carrying waste from cities in the sky. Every night, they came to this place. Every night, they opened their metal doors and dropped mountains of garbage into the deep pit below. Inside the pit, the air was heavy with the smell of rot, oil, and burning metal. Rats with glowing eyes moved between broken machines. Sharp glass and rusted iron covered the ground. This was not a place where life could survive. Yet, hidden among the trash, someone was alive. She was a girl. Not human, but alien. Her skin shone faintly in the dark, pale blue like the moon. Her eyes were bright, full of fear and sadness. For weeks she had lived here, hiding between piles of garbage, searching for scraps to eat, drinking dirty water dripping from pipes above. She had no home, no family, no voice that anyone wanted to hear. She was only a lost shadow inside the pit. Then, the sound came. A deep, thunderous roar echoed above. She looked up with trembling hands. Another waste ship was approaching. The massive belly of the ship opened wide like a monster ready to spit poison. And then, the garbage fell. Tons of rotten food, plastic, broken machines and metal parts rained down from the sky. She tried to run, but there was no safe place. The wave of filth crashed over her, knocking her to the ground. She screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the noise of falling trash. A heavy metal frame hit the ground beside her, spraying dirt and oil. Rotten cloth wrapped around her legs. Glass cut her hands as she tried to push herself up. She coughed, her body shaking, her chest burning from the smoke. Then the worst happened. Pieces of sharp scrap tore through the thin rags she wore. She stumbled, pulling at the cloth, but it was too late. The garbage had stripped her bare. She froze in horror, clutching her arms across her chest, trying to hide herself from the world. Her heart pounded like a drum, her eyes filled with tears. Shame and fear covered her more than the dirt. In that moment she felt smaller than ever before. Just another piece of broken trash left to rot in the pit. She curled up, shivering. Why? She whispered in her strange tongue, though no one could hear her. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the garbage and never be seen again. But she was not alone. High above, hidden behind the shadow of a broken tower, a pair of human eyes watched her. A boy, thin and quiet, stood on the edge of the pit. He had come searching for scrap metal to sell. He had climbed the old ladder hoping to find something valuable among the waste. But what he saw was not just garbage. It was her. His breath caught. He almost called out, but he stopped himself. His eyes widened as he watched the alien girl struggle, covering herself with shaking arms, her body covered in dirt and bruises. She was not like any creature he had seen before. She was fragile, beautiful in a strange way, but broken by pain. He could leave. He could turn away and pretend he had never seen her. That would be safer. This world did not forgive kindness. Helping someone like her could bring trouble, even death. Yet his feet did not move. His hands clenched tight. Something inside him whispered, "Don't leave her. Not like this." The alien girl pressed herself against a pile of garbage, desperate to hide. Her eyes darted around, afraid that someone would see her shame. She did not know that she was already seen. She did not know that in the silence of the night, one human heart had already chosen her fate. Above, the boy stepped back into the shadows. His mind raced. Should he help her? Should he risk everything? And down below, the girl lifted her head slowly. For the first time, she felt it. Not the eyes of hate, not the eyes of cruelty, but the feeling of being watched with something different, something human. The night was still, but the boy's heart was not. His chest rose and fell quickly as he crouched behind the old tower. From the darkness, his eyes never left the girl. He had seen many strange things in the garbage pit, broken robots, animal bones, even dead bodies thrown away like trash. But never had he seen a living alien, and not like this. The girl struggled to pull dirty pieces of cloth from the ground, trying to cover her trembling body. She pressed the filthy rags to her chest, but they slipped away, too torn and soaked with oil to hide her. Every sound made her flinch. Every shadow made her curl tighter against the pile of waste. She was not just afraid of the garbage. She was afraid of being seen. The boy swallowed hard. His name was Aaron. He had come here to search for scrap parts, something he could sell for a few coins. His family lived on the edge of the city, barely surviving. Every day was a fight for food, every night a fear of hunger. Yet now, staring at the alien girl below, he felt something stronger than hunger. A weight pressed against his chest. If someone finds her, they will kill her, or worse. He knew the truth of this world. Aliens were not welcome here. They were treated as animals, slaves, or weapons for war. If the city guards discovered her, they would drag her out, humiliate her, maybe even throw her into the fire pits. The thought made Aaron's stomach twist. He looked at his hands. They were small, rough from climbing through scrap and dirt, but they trembled now. Could he help her? Should he? The girl coughed weakly, clutching the cloth tighter. She tried to crawl deeper into the garbage pile, away from the open air. But her foot slipped on a piece of metal, and she fell hard onto the ground. She groaned, in pain, curling into herself. Aaron's decision came like a spark. He could not stand still anymore. He reached into his old bag, pulled out a piece of brown fabric, a thin blanket he always carried for the cold nights. It wasn't much, but it was clean compared to the rags she had. He looked around. The pit was silent, only the wind blowing across the sharp metal. He climbed down the ladder slowly, every step echoing in his ears. His boots touched the garbage floor with a soft thud. The girl froze. Her glowing eyes turned toward him. Fear exploded across her face. She pushed herself back against the wall of trash, holding the rags tighter, her breath sharp and fast. Aaron raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. "Wait," he said softly. His voice was low, careful, like speaking to a bird that might fly away at any moment. "I won't hurt you." The girl did not understand his words, but she felt the tone. Still, she pressed herself harder into the corner, shaking her head. Aaron took a slow step closer, then stopped. He did not want her to think he was another enemy. He held out the blanket, stretching it toward her. "Here," he whispered. "Take." Her eyes locked on the fabric. Her breath hitched. For a moment, she did not move. Then slowly, like a frightened child, she reached out with trembling fingers. Her hand brushed the cloth, then snatched it away. She quickly wrapped it around herself, covering her body. A sigh escaped her lips. Her shoulders lowered just a little. For the first time, her eyes softened. Aaron felt relief wash over him. He knelt on the ground, keeping his distance, showing he would not come closer unless she allowed it. The girl watched him carefully, clutching the blanket to her chest. For a long moment, neither spoke. The night was filled only with the crackling sound of garbage shifting under its own weight. Finally, the girl whispered something in her strange language. Her voice was soft, broken like glass about to shatter. Aaron didn't understand, but he knew what it meant. "Thank you," he nodded, giving a small smile. "You're safe now." But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. She was not safe, not here. The garbage pit was dangerous, and worse, the city guards often patrolled these areas. If they saw her with him, they would take her away, and maybe him too. Aaron's mind raced. He had to make a choice: leave her here and walk away, or risk everything to protect her. The girl pulled the blanket tighter and looked at him with wide eyes, as if begging him not to disappear. Her lips trembled. Her whole body shook, not only from the cold but from fear. Aaron clenched his fists. He had made his choice. He would not leave her. Not like this. From far away, the sound of heavy engines echoed across the pit. Aaron's head snapped up. Lights flickered above the horizon. His stomach sank. The city guards were coming. He looked back at the girl. Her eyes widened as the noise grew louder. She shook her head, whispering words he could not understand. But Aaron understood her fear. "Stay quiet," he whispered urgently. "Stay with me." He grabbed a piece of broken sheet metal and dragged it near, creating a cover between the garbage piles. He motioned for her to hide behind it. At first, she hesitated. Then, clutching the blanket, she crawled close to him, slipping under the metal with trembling hands. Together they crouched in the darkness, breaths shallow as the engines grew louder. For the first time, the alien girl was not hiding alone. For the first time, a human was at her side, and for the first time, Aran felt a new fear, not for himself but for her. The night was no longer quiet. The sound of engines rolled across the garbage pit, growing closer with every second. Red searchlights cut through the darkness, scanning the piles of trash. Metal clanged as boots landed on the ground above. The guards were here. Aaron pressed his back against the sheet of broken metal, his heart pounding in his chest. Beside him, the alien girl shivered, clutching the blanket around her body. He could hear her breathing, fast, sharp, like a frightened bird trapped in a cage. "Quiet," he whispered, raising a finger to his lips. She did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. She nodded, pulling the fabric tighter around herself. Above them, voices echoed. Harsh, cold voices. "Search the pit," one guard shouted. "Check the piles. Something was moving down there earlier." Aaron's stomach twisted. They must have seen her earlier. Maybe her pale skin, glowing faintly in the dark, had caught their eyes. If they found her now, it would be the end. The girl pressed closer to him, her shoulder trembling against his arm. Aaron froze. He had never been this close to anyone so strange, so alien. Yet in her fear she looked just like any human, just like him. Boots crunched on metal above them. A beam of red light swept across their hiding place. The girl gasped softly. Aaron reacted instantly, pressing his hand gently over her mouth. Her wide eyes locked on his. For a moment, she stiffened. Then, slowly, she relaxed, letting his hand stay as the light passed. Only when the guards moved on did he pull his hand away. She touched her lips, her glowing eyes still fixed on him. Something had changed in that moment. For the first time, she had allowed him to protect her. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the engines roared again, and the voices faded. The guards left the pit, leaving only silence behind. Aaron exhaled heavily. His whole body shook with relief. He looked at the girl. She was staring at him, her lips trembling, her hands still gripping the blanket. "You're safe," he whispered, though he knew she could not understand. The girl tilted her head, confused by the words but sensing the tone. Then to his surprise, she slowly lifted her hand and touched his chest, right where his heart was beating. Her touch was light, almost fearful, but her eyes softened as she felt the rhythm beneath his ribs. Aaron swallowed. He understood. She was asking, "Why? Why did you save me?" He gave a small smile. "Because you needed me." The words meant nothing to her, but the feeling did. Her shoulders lowered, the tension in her body easing. For the first time, her lips curved into the smallest of smiles. It was weak, broken, but real. Aaron knew then that something had shifted between them. Trust had begun, fragile like glass but alive. He stood and offered his hand. "Come." She looked at it, uncertain. Her glowing eyes narrowed as if trying to read his soul. Then slowly, she placed her hand in his. Her fingers were thin, cold, but strong. He pulled her gently to her feet. The garbage pit stretched endlessly around them, but Aaron knew they could not stay here. He had to find her a safe place, at least, for the night. As they walked, she stumbled often, unused to the sharp ground of broken metal. Each time she fell, Aaron helped her up. She began to notice something. He never looked at her with disgust, never with cruelty. Every other being she had known had treated her like trash. But this boy, He looked at her as if she mattered. When they reached a quiet corner, Aaron pulled out a flask of water from his bag. He held it out to her. She stared at it, suspicious. He took a sip first, then offered it again. Only then did she accept. She drank quickly, drops spilling down her chin. "Easy," he said softly. She coughed, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand, but there was relief in her eyes now. Aaron dug further into his bag and found a small piece of bread. It was old, dry, but still edible. He broke it in half and offered one piece to her. She hesitated, then took it with both hands, holding it like treasure. When she bit into it, her eyes closed, and for a moment she looked almost at peace. Aaron watched her, silently. He felt something stir inside him. She was alien, yes, but she was also vulnerable and beautiful in a way he could not explain. The girl looked at him as she ate. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak. Finally, she whispered one word, in her language he didn't understand, but her tone was clear. It was her name. Lyra. Aaron repeated it softly. Lyra. She nodded, eyes shining. For the first time, she had given him something of herself. Aaron placed his hand on his chest. Aaron. She pointed at him, repeating slowly. Ron. A smile spread across his face. They had shared their names. A fragile bridge had formed between them, but even as warmth filled the air, Aaron knew danger was not gone. The guards would return. Others might come. He had no idea why this girl had been left here, naked and broken in the garbage pit. But he knew one thing. If anyone else found her, they would not be as kind. He looked at her glowing eyes, now calmer, now watching him with trust. He clenched his fists. I'll protect you, he whispered. She could not understand the words, but she understood the promise. And for the first time in her broken life, Lyra believed it. The night deepened, and the wind carried the sharp smell of rust and smoke across the pit. Aaron and Lyra sat hidden between the jagged walls of garbage. For a while, silence hung heavy between them. The boy stared at the stars above, faint lights struggling against the black sky. The girl sat curled beneath the thin blanket, her glowing eyes fixed on him, full of questions. Aaron wanted to ask her everything. Where did she come from? Why was she here? Who had done this to her? But he did not know how. They spoke different. Tongues and words were like locked doors. Still, he knew there must be a way. He pulled a small stick from the trash and drew in the dirt. First, he scratched a circle and pointed at himself. Aaron, he said. Lyra tilted her head, watching. Slowly, she reached out, drew another circle beside his, and touched her chest. Lyra. Aaron smiled. Step by step, they were learning. He drew a third circle, larger, and pointed at the sky. Home, he said. Then he pointed back to himself, shaking his head. No home. He looked at her, waiting. Her eyes darkened. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she drew her own shape, not a circle, but a star. Her hand trembled as she pressed her finger against it. She whispered a word, soft and broken. Aaron repeated it carefully. Serath? Lyra's eyes filled, with tears. She nodded. That was her home. Aaron looked at the star shape. It meant nothing to him, yet he understood everything. She was far from her people, far from the world she once belonged to. Lyra reached again into the dirt and drew a line, from the star ending in a jagged cross. Her breathing grew heavy. She spoke another word, harsh and filled with sorrow. Aaron frowned. He didn't understand, but he could feel the weight of it. He placed his hand on his chest. Bad? She nodded. Then, with trembling hands, she drew, small figures, tiny stars around the big one. Slowly she crossed them out one by one. Her body shook and a tear slipped down her cheek. Aaron's heart sank. He understood now. Her people were gone. Destroyed. Lyra pressed both hands against her chest, whispering words in her strange tongue, her face twisted in pain. She looked at Aaron then, her glowing eyes begging him to understand. She was the last. The only one left. Aaron's throat tightened. He had lost friends before, neighbors to hunger, strangers to war. But what she had lost was greater than anything he could imagine. Her whole race, her family, her world. He could not give her words of comfort, but he gave her silence. A silence that said he understood. Lyra's voice broke again, softer this time. She pointed to herself, then to the garbage around them. Aaron's stomach twisted. They had thrown her here like waste. Not only had they taken her people, but they had tried to erase her too, burying her in shame. Anger flared in Aaron's chest. He clenched his fists until his nails dug into his palms. The cruelty of it burned inside him. Yet, when he looked at her shivering beneath the blanket, his anger turned into something else, a fierce resolve. "You are not trash," he whispered. His voice was sharp, trembling with emotion. She didn't know the words, but she felt them. Her eyes softened and her lips trembled as if she wanted to believe him. Aaron reached out slowly, carefully, and placed his hand over hers. Her fingers were cold, thin, but they tightened around his. For the first time, she let herself lean against him, resting her head on his shoulder. The boy froze, then let out a shaky breath. He had never felt something like this. Protecting her wasn't just a choice anymore. It was a promise written into his very bones. The night passed in fragments of silence and whispers. Lyra tried to speak again, repeating broken words in her language, pointing at the sky, the ground, herself and him. Aaron listened even when he could not understand. Each sound was a piece of her story, and each gesture painted a clearer picture of her suffering. By dawn, the first light crept into the pit, revealing their tired faces. Aaron blinked against the gray morning glow. Lyra was awake, her eyes watching the sky, distant and full of sorrow. Then came the sound. Low, metallic, crawling through the garbage like a beast. Aaron stiffened. Lyra's head snapped toward the noise, fear flashing in her eyes. From behind a wall of twisted metal, a drone floated into view. Its red eye scanned the pit, clicking as it recorded everything it saw. Aaron's blood ran cold. The guards had sent machines now. If the drone spotted her glowing skin, it would send the signal and soldiers would return. Lyra clutched his arm, whispering his name. Ron." Her voice shook with terror. Aaron pulled her close, his mind racing. He could not let them find her. Not after everything she had told him, everything she had lost. He looked into her glowing eyes, his jaw set. He would not fail her. Not now. The drone drifted closer, its red light sweeping the ground. And for the first time, Aaron realized the truth. Protecting Lyra was not just about saving her. It was about proving something greater, something human. The red glow of the drone's eye cut through the shadows like a blade. Aaron pulled Lyra down behind a broken pipe, his heart pounding so hard he thought the machine might hear it. The drone hovered closer, clicking and humming, its metal body turning left and right as it scanned the piles of waste. Lyra pressed her face against Aaron's shoulder, her hands clutching the blanket so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Aaron could feel her trembling. He whispered, barely moving his lips, "Stay still, don't move." The drone's red light swept over the pipe, glowing faintly across Aaron's cheek. He held his breath, his chest screaming for air. Just when he thought he would suffocate, the light shifted away. The machine drifted past them, scanning deeper into the pit. For a moment, relief filled him. But then the drone stopped. Its head turned. The red light flashed back in their direction. Aaron's stomach dropped. It had seen something. "Run!" he hissed. Lyra's eyes widened. She didn't understand the word, but she understood his urgency. Aaron grabbed her hand, pulling her up, and together they stumbled through the piles of trash. The sound of the drone's alarm filled the air, sharp and metallic. From above, more engines roared. The guards were coming back. Aaron pushed Lyra forward, guiding her through a narrow tunnel of broken machinery. Rust scraped his arms, sharp wires cut at his skin, but he didn't stop. The sound of boots echoed above as soldiers shouted to each other, "There, by the lower pits." "Don't let it escape this time." Lyra stumbled, her bare feet bleeding from shards of glass. Aaron pulled her up again, refusing to let her fall. His lungs burned, but he forced himself to keep moving. If they were caught now, it would all be over. They reached a dead end, a wall of twisted steel and broken concrete. Aaron cursed under his breath. He looked around desperately. Then he saw it. A narrow gap between two collapsed machines, barely wide enough for them to crawl through. "This way," he whispered, shoving Lyra toward it. She hesitated, her eyes full of fear. The space was dark, tight, like a throat waiting to swallow them whole. But Aaron nodded firmly, pushing her gently. "Trust me." Lyra looked at him for one long second. Then, clutching the blanket, she dropped to her knees and crawled into the gap. Aaron followed, his back scraping against jagged metal as he squeezed through. The air inside was thick with dust and the smell of rust. Outside, boots clattered against the ground. A guard's voice thundered, "The drone picked up movement. Search the tunnels." Aaron held his breath again. Lyra pressed close against him, her glowing eyes dimming as she tried to make herself small. Together they waited in the suffocating dark. Shadows passed outside. A beam of red light swept across the gap. Aaron pressed his body over Lyra's, shielding her with his own. The light lingered, then moved on. Minutes dragged by like hours. Finally, the voices grew distant. The guards moved deeper into the pit. Aaron exhaled slowly, his forehead damp with sweat. He looked at Lyra. Her face was pale, but her eyes locked on his, glowing faintly in the dark. She whispered his name, her voice trembling. "Aaron." He managed a weak smile. "Still alive." She touched his chest again, feeling the heartbeat racing under his ribs. She whispered something in her tongue, soft and desperate. He didn't know the words, but the meaning was clear. "Don't leave me." Aaron nodded firmly. "I won't." They crawled out the other side of the tunnel, emerging into a quieter part of the pit. The air was colder here, and the garbage piles rose like walls around them. For a moment it felt safer, but Aaron knew it wouldn't last. The guards would keep searching until they found her. They needed a way out. He looked up at the high metal walls surrounding the pit. Beyond them was the wasteland, dangerous but free. If he could get her out of here, maybe they would have a chance. Aaron scanned the piles, searching for something. Then he saw it, an old service ladder bolted to the wall, half broken but still holding. It led up toward the edge of the pit. "That's it," he whispered. But reaching it would not be easy. The open ground between them and the ladder was wide and exposed. If the drones returned, they would be spotted instantly. Lyra followed his gaze, her lips parting in fear. She shook her head. "Too dangerous." Aaron crouched in front of her. "We can do it, together." She looked at him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. They moved carefully, staying low, weaving between broken machines and piles of trash. Every sound made them freeze. Every shadow felt like a hunter's gaze. The climb to freedom seemed endless. Finally, they reached the ladder. Aaron tested it. It groaned under his weight, but it held. He looked back at Lyra. "Go." She shook her head, pointing at him. She wanted him to climb first. Aaron hesitated, then nodded. He pulled himself onto the ladder, the rust biting into his hands. Each step creaked, threatening to snap. He reached halfway before glancing down. Lyra stood at the bottom, clutching the blanket with one hand, watching him with wide eyes. He motioned for her to follow. Slowly, she placed her bare foot on the first rung, then the second. Her hands trembled as she climbed, but she kept going. The air grew colder the higher they went. Freedom was close. But then, a sound ripped through the night, the mechanical roar of engines. Aaron froze. Above them, another ship hovered into view. Its floodlights exploded across the pit, turning night into day. Lyra gasped, clinging to the ladder. Aaron's stomach dropped. They had been seen. The ship's speakers blared. "Stop where you are. Do not resist." Searchlights locked onto them, blinding and merciless. Aaron's mind raced. They could not go back down. They could not climb fast enough. They were trapped. He looked at Lyra, her glowing eyes full of terror. And he realized this was not the end. Not yet. Because if the universe wanted to take her, it would have to take him first. The floodlights burned like suns, flooding the garbage pit in white fire. Aaron squinted, his hand shielding his eyes. Beside him, Lyra clung to the ladder, frozen in terror. The air shook with the sound of the ship's engines. "Climbers spotted!" A guard's voice thundered from above. "Bring them down!" Aaron's blood ran cold. He yanked at Lyra's arm. "Move!" he shouted, even though she couldn't understand his words. His urgency was enough. She scrambled upward, her blanket whipping in the wind. A sharp crack split the air. Sparks exploded from the ladder as bullets struck the metal. Lyra screamed, clutching the rung with shaking hands. Aaron pulled himself, higher, forcing his body against the burning ache in his muscles. "Faster!" he gasped, though his own lungs were on fire. Another blast shook the ladder. The bottom half ripped away, crashing into the garbage below. Lyra nearly fell, but Aaron caught her wrist just in time. His arm screamed with pain as he pulled her back. Their eyes locked, hers wide with fear, his burning with determination. "I've got you," he whispered, even though the words were drowned by the roar of engines. Above, more guards leaned over the edge, rifles raised. Aaron's mind raced. They would never make it to the top. He glanced around desperately. To the right. A collapsed chute stretched down from the wall, a rusted tunnel where waste had once poured. It was broken, jagged, but it might lead out. Aaron grabbed Lyra's arm and pointed. "There, go." She followed his gaze, understanding instantly. Without hesitation, she climbed sideways, her bare feet slipping on the rusted steel. Aaron followed, every muscle screaming, every breath a battle. Bullets sparked against the wall. Shards of rust rained down. The guards shouted above, their voices filled with rage. At last, Lyra reached the chute. She looked back at Aaron, her eyes pleading. He gave her a firm nod. "Go." She disappeared into the tunnel, her blanket fluttering, like a shadow. Aaron pulled himself in after her, just as a hail of bullets tore through the air where he had been seconds before. Inside, the chute was narrow and dark. The smell of rot and oil choked him, but there was no time to think. The tunnel sloped downward, broken metal scraping against their skin as they crawled. Suddenly, the ground gave way. The chute ended in a steep drop, opening into another section of the pit. Lyra slid forward with a cry, vanishing into the darkness. "Lyra!" Aaron shouted, diving after her. He tumbled, metal tearing at his clothes until he crashed hard onto a pile of trash. Pain exploded across his ribs, but he forced himself up. His eyes darted through the gloom. Then he saw her, Lyra, curled at the base of the pile, clutching the blanket. She groaned, struggling to stand. Relief surged through him, but it didn't last. From above, the red eye of a drone flickered to life, scanning the area. It beeped, locking onto them. "No," Aaron muttered. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her to her feet. "Run!" Together they stumbled across the garbage, slipping on broken glass and rusted wires. The drone's alarm screamed through, the night echoing across the pit. From far away, the roar of more engines grew louder. Reinforcements were coming. Aaron's mind spun. Think. He spotted a cluster of old machines collapsed together, forming a maze of tunnels beneath them. If they could reach it, they might disappear into the maze. He dragged Lyra toward it. But the drone swooped low, firing a bolt of electricity that cracked against the ground inches from their feet. Lyra screamed, stumbling again. Aaron turned, fury blazing in his eyes. He grabbed a piece of rusted pipe from the ground, swung it with all his strength and smashed it into the drone. Sparks exploded as the machine spun wildly, its alarm cutting off in a burst of static. It crashed into the garbage. Broken, Aaron stood panting, the pipe shaking in his hands. Lyra stared at him, her eyes wide, not just with fear but with awe. For a moment, silence returned. Then the engines roared again, closer this time. Floodlights swept across the pit. The guards were almost on them. Aaron dropped the pipe and grabbed Lyra's hand once more. Now, they ran, their feet pounding against the shifting trash. The maze of collapsed machines loomed ahead. Aaron shoved Lyra inside first, then crawled in after her. The tunnels were dark, the air thick with dust. Metal groaned above them. As they crawled deeper, their breaths ragged. Outside, voices shouted, engines rumbled, lights swept across the ground. But inside the maze, shadows swallowed them whole. Finally, they collapsed in a small pocket of space, hidden beneath layers of steel. Aaron's chest heaved as he gasped for air. Lyra pressed against him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. For a long moment, neither spoke. The world outside thundered with chaos, but inside they were alive. Lyra reached out, her trembling fingers brushing against Aaron's face. She whispered his name again. Aaron. He caught her hand, holding it, tight. His voice was hoarse but firm. I told you, I won't let them take you. She closed her eyes, leaning against him. For the first time since he had found her, she allowed herself to believe it. Outside, the search continued. The guards would not stop. The hunt was far from over. But for now, hidden in the belly of the garbage maze, two lives beat as one. Human and alien, bound together by fear, by hope, and by something far stronger than either of them had ever known. The garbage maze groaned around them, every piece of rusted steel threatening to collapse. Aaron sat with his back against the cold metal, breathing hard. His arm throbbed where the drone's sparks had grazed him, but he ignored the pain. Beside him, Lyra leaned close, her glowing eyes watching his every move. For a moment, the world outside seemed far away, but Aaron knew better. The guards would not give up. Drones could scan the pit for hours, and once the sun rose, hiding would be impossible. We can't stay here, he whispered, more to himself than to her. Lyra tilted her head. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the feeling in his voice. Danger still hunted them. Aaron pulled himself up, his legs shaking. He searched the maze, following faint drafts of air. If there was wind, there was an exit. Somewhere, hidden under years of broken machines, there had to be a way out. Lyra clutched the blanket tighter, her bare feet cutting against the sharp ground. Still, she followed him without hesitation. Trust had replaced fear. At last, Aaron found a tunnel that sloped upward, the air colder, fresher. His chest lifted with hope. This way, he murmured. They crawled through, metal scraping their arms. The tunnel opened into a wide crack in the wall of the pit. Beyond it stretched the wastelands, endless fields of rock and dust, empty but free. Aaron smiled for the first time that night. We made it. But the words died in his throat. A spotlight swept across the crack. A ship hovered above, its guns pointed directly at them. Lyra gasped, pulling back. Aaron stood frozen, his fists clenched. There was no time to run, no tunnel to hide in. By order of the city, a metallic voice boomed from the ship. The alien is property of the state. Hand her over and your life will be spared. Aaron's jaw tightened. He looked at Lyra. She trembled, her eyes wide with terror. She shook her head violently, whispering his name. Aaron! He turned back to the lights. His heart pounded. They were offering him a choice. Give her up or die. For a moment, the weight of it crushed him. He thought of his family, the hunger, the endless struggle of survival. One word, one surrender, and he could walk away alive. But when he looked at Lyra again, he saw more than fear. He saw trust. She believed in him. She had given him her name, her story, her fragile hope. She had no one else. Aaron's voice shook, but it rose clear and strong. She is not your property. She is not your trash. She is alive. The guards, above, laughed, their voices cruel. The ship's guns whirred, locking onto him. Lyra grabbed his arm, tears streaming down her face. She whispered words he couldn't understand, but he knew the meaning. Don't do this. Save yourself. But Aaron shook his head. He stepped in front of her, spreading his arms wide. "If you want her," he shouted, "you'll have to go through me." The spotlight blinded him. For a heartbeat there was silence. Then the guns fired. The ground exploded beside him. Dust and shards of metal filled the air. Aaron grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her through the crack. Together, they tumbled into the wastelands as the pit behind them shook with fire. The ship turned, engines roaring as it gave chase. Aaron and Lyra ran, their legs burning, the barren ground stretching endlessly before them. Every blast from the ship lit the night sky, throwing their shadows long across the dust. At last they stumbled into a canyon, narrow walls rising around them. Aaron pulled Lyra into a crevice, pressing her against the rock as the ship thundered past overhead, its searchlight sweeping the ground. They waited, breathless. Minutes dragged by. Then slowly the sound of engines faded into the distance. The ship had lost them. Aaron collapsed against the rock, his chest heaving. Lyra slid down beside him, her face streaked with tears and dust. For a moment, neither spoke. Then softly she touched his hand. "Human," she whispered. Her voice shook, but her eyes glowed with something new. Not just fear, but gratitude. "Kind." Aaron looked at her, stunned. It was the first human word she had spoken. His throat tightened. He smiled weakly. "Yeah, kind." The dawn broke over the wastelands, painting the sky with shades of red and gold. For the first time, Lyra saw the sun rise in freedom. She leaned against Aaron, her head resting on his shoulder. He wrapped the blanket tighter around her, his eyes fixed on the horizon. They had nothing, no food, no home, no plan. But they had each other, and in that moment Aaron understood something powerful. It wasn't strength or weapons that made humans special. It wasn't power or cruelty. It was this, the refusal to abandon someone who needed them. The choice to fight, even when the world said, "Surrender." Lyra closed her eyes, whispering his name again. Aaron tightened his grip on her hand. Together, they walked into the wastelands, two fragile figures against an endless world. But they were not broken, not anymore. Because in the darkest pit of garbage, among the cruelty of machines and men, something new had been born. Hope. And it was human.